In a bold strike amid escalating US-China trade tensions, Beijing has frozen all Boeing aircraft deliveries, leaving over 130 jets undelivered and billions in deals stalled on the tarmac. This isn't just turbulence for Boeing, it's an open runway for Airbus and China's own COMAC to soar. As the American aerospace titan loses altitude, rivals are circling, and the US could face long-term fallout in global trade and industrial dominance. Here's how this high-stakes power shift is unfolding and why it matters far beyond the skies. For years, Boeing and China enjoyed a high-flying relationship, with China accounting for around 15% of Boeing's global commercial aircraft deliveries. This wasn't just a big market, it was an essential one. But that runway came to a screeching halt when Beijing instructed its domestic carriers to pause Boeing purchases, a direct counter to the US's 145% tariffs on Chinese imports. This retaliatory move followed the Trump administration's broader hardline trade stance. The timing was brutal. Boeing already had 737 MAX jets prepped and painted for Chinese airlines, now rerouted or returned stateside like stranded luggage. Over 130 aircraft orders from China are effectively grounded not by technical issues but by geopolitics. This isn't just a red alert for Boeing's quarterly revenue, the company could bleed billions in lost deals. Worse, its future presence in the Chinese market now hangs by a thread. And when Boeing hurts, the whole US aerospace ecosystem feels the pain, from fuselage fabricators to engine tech firms. Aviation, like the auto world, thrives on finely tuned logistics and long-term partnerships. When a supply chain stutters at this scale, the aftershocks hit maintenance crews, export hubs, and even auto suppliers who share cross-industry vendors. Boeing's financial headache is just the first wave. The broader American industry is bracing for impact next. Boeing isn't just an aircraft company, it's a pillar of American industry, supporting 140,000 direct jobs with an extended supply chain that touches virtually every major manufacturing state. Now imagine that machine stalling. The freeze on Chinese deliveries risks massive job cuts, especially among suppliers producing avionics, composites, and jet propulsion systems, many of whom also manufacture components used in heavy-duty vehicles, trucks, and even electric drivetrain systems. Boeing's estimated $10 to $12 billion in annual Chinese revenue was critical to its global R&D programs, including fuel efficiency research and materials innovation, tech that often spills over into the automotive realm. Cut that funding, and innovation in multiple sectors could sputter. Add to that the existing hurdles, 737 MAX reputational scars, post-pandemic supply disruptions, and Airbus gaining altitude. Boeing's hit isn't isolated, it's an echo across industries that share manufacturing DNA. Even more concerning, China's decision to wield aviation as a geopolitical weapon could set a dangerous precedent. If economic retaliation becomes the new norm, we might be witnessing the dawn of industrial protectionism, where trade war casualties start popping up in unexpected places, including auto showrooms. As Boeing's jet stream fades in China, rivals are stepping on the gas, or rather throttling up their turbines. Airbus, long viewed as Boeing's European counterpart, is rapidly expanding in China with a final assembly plant in Tianjin and deep ties to state-backed carriers. Recently, Taiwan's China Airlines locked in an order for 10 Airbus A350-1000s. Meanwhile, COMAC, China's own aerospace challenger, is accelerating production of its C919 narrowbody jet. The numbers are hard to ignore, over 1,000 orders, mostly domestic, and ambitions to crank out 75 jets annually by year's end, aiming for 200 by 2029. The C919 may still rely on Western engines and avionics, but China's play is clear: self-sufficiency and market dominance. While COMAC's international certification efforts remain grounded by regulatory hurdles, the longer Boeing is benched, the more runway its rivals have to soar. This realignment is more than market noise, it's reshaping the future of global aviation alliances. A reshaped aviation market might also shift how trade lanes and industrial alliances evolve, bringing new players, new rules, and new costs across aviation and auto manufacturing. And if the skies are changing, the geopolitical weather forecast isn't any calmer either. The halt in Boeing aircraft deliveries is just one jet stream in a much larger weather system, the broader geopolitical storm between the US and China. This isn't just about tariffs and retaliations, it's about two global giants clashing over influence, innovation, and industrial supremacy. For China, pausing Boeing orders is a triple win. It hits back at Washington's tariff barrage, boosts its own aerospace sector with COMAC smiling, and reinforces its long-term ambition for technological independence. It's Beijing's way of saying, we won't just play your trade game, we'll change the rules. For the US, the fallout is a harsh reminder of how deeply its economic engine is tied to global competitors. Boeing's struggles spotlight just how vulnerable major corporations become when geopolitics enters the cockpit. But the blast radius doesn't end with aviation. Agriculture, energy, and tech, entire American industries, are now in Beijing's crosshairs. Uncertainty like this gums up investment, rattles supply chains, and dims global growth. It also tests the very framework of global trade. If economic retaliation becomes the new diplomacy, then Boeing's crisis might just be the first chapter in a much longer story. As US-China tensions climb, a diplomatic off-ramp remains possible. Both nations understand the mutual value of stability, especially in high-stakes industries like aerospace. In the short term, sector-specific talks, modest tariff rollbacks, or joint ventures could ease the pressure. For Boeing, survival means agility, diversifying its customer base, strengthening ties in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa, and accelerating innovation in modular aircraft and alternative manufacturing hubs. The goal: reduce reliance on politically risky markets and build resilience into the supply chain. Still, much hinges on political will. If the tariff war rages on, a return to pre-2025 trade norms looks distant. Yet economic pain can shift priorities. Losses in revenue, jobs, or GDP may force both sides back to the negotiating table. Boeing, meanwhile, is lobbying hard in D.C., warning that long-term exclusion from China could cost America its edge in global aviation. This isn't just about aircraft, it's about a broader industrial battle where corporate strategy meets geopolitics. However this plays out, the aviation world and global trade won't emerge unchanged. This isn't a routine dispute over aircraft, it's a high-altitude power play. Boeing, with decades of American aerospace dominance behind it, now finds itself grounded by political gravity. Meanwhile, China sees an opening to fast-track its ambitions with COMAC at the helm. Up to $50 billion in Boeing market value is hanging in the balance. If that doesn't send warning lights flashing across corporate boardrooms and trade offices worldwide, what will? Now we ask, is Boeing's China freeze a short-term stall or a permanent reroute in global aviation? Can diplomacy untangle this standoff, or are we witnessing the new normal in trade warfare? And how should other U.S. industries prepare if they're next in line? As Boeing navigates the complexities of US-China trade tensions, recent developments indicate a cautious resumption of aircraft deliveries to China, albeit under a cloud of uncertainty. After a lengthy hiatus, Boeing has restarted deliveries of its 737 MAX and 787 Dreamliner aircraft to Chinese airlines. This significant step follows a comprehensive regulatory review by the Civil Aviation Administration of China, CAAC, which was particularly concerned with the batteries used in cockpit voice recorders. The resumption is seen as a positive signal for Boeing, which is keen to rebuild its once strong presence in the Chinese aviation market. China, according to forecasts, is expected to require approximately 8,830 new commercial aircraft by the year 2043, highlighting the enormous potential that lies ahead for companies that can secure a foothold in this critical market. Nevertheless, Boeing's path is anything but straightforward. The company faces mounting challenges, not only from geopolitical tensions and regulatory hurdles but also from the emergence of strong domestic competitors within China. Chief among these is the state-owned Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, commonly known as COMAC. While Boeing was grappling with international restrictions and technical setbacks, COMAC steadily strengthened its domestic position. At the 15th Airshow China event, COMAC announced an impressive set of orders for 130 aircraft. These orders included 60 C919 narrow-body jets and 40 C909 regional jets from Hainan Airlines, alongside 30 additional C909s from colorful Guizhou Airlines. The event marked a major milestone for China's ambitions to develop a self-reliant aviation industry, reducing the need for imports from established aerospace giants like Boeing and Airbus. COMAC's momentum is no accident. It represents years of strategic planning and investment by China's government to create an indigenous aircraft manufacturing industry capable of competing on a global scale. The C919, which competes directly with Boeing's 737 and Airbus's A320 series, has been heavily backed by state resources and financial support, ensuring that Chinese airlines have incentives to purchase domestically produced planes. The steady advancement of COMAC is viewed by many analysts as a sign of China's broader strategy to dominate critical industrial sectors and reduce dependence on Western technologies. While Boeing struggles to regain its footing in China, Airbus has adeptly capitalized on the opportunity. The European aerospace giant has continued to strengthen its foothold in China through strategic partnerships, expanded production capacity, and a long-term commitment to the local market. Airbus's relationship with China has been marked by mutual investment. Not only does Airbus sell planes to Chinese airlines, but it also increasingly relies on Chinese firms to manufacture critical components for its entire range of commercial aircraft. This deepening industrial cooperation offers Airbus a competitive edge, making it a preferred partner in the eyes of Chinese authorities and airlines alike. Airbus's plans to open a second final assembly line in Tianjin by early 2026 are another testament to its commitment to the Chinese market. By boosting its local production capabilities, Airbus ensures faster delivery times, enhanced customer service, and a stronger presence within the world's second-largest aviation market. The consequences of these developments stretch far beyond the commercial considerations of a few corporations. They point toward a larger reordering of global aviation dynamics, where geopolitical considerations, national industrial policies, and technological capabilities intersect. For Boeing, the partial resumption of deliveries is undoubtedly a welcome relief, providing much-needed revenue and signaling a tentative improvement in relations with Chinese regulators. However, Boeing's market share is likely to face continued pressure from both COMAC's growing appeal and Airbus's entrenched partnerships. The era when Boeing and Airbus comfortably dominated global aircraft orders is giving way to a more fragmented landscape in which new entrants like COMAC steadily carve out market share. The shifting dynamics in China's aviation sector could have wider ramifications for the global industry. As China's domestic aircraft production scales up, other emerging markets may also seek to diversify their aircraft suppliers, considering COMAC as a viable alternative to Boeing and Airbus. This diversification could erode the duopoly that has defined global aviation for decades. Meanwhile, Airbus's ability to blend globalized supply chains with localized production gives it an additional competitive advantage, particularly in markets where economic nationalism and industrial localization are becoming increasingly important themes. Boeing's challenges in China are further compounded by ongoing technical and regulatory issues. Although the CAAC has allowed the resumption of deliveries after concerns over cockpit voice recorder batteries were addressed, the regulatory environment remains strict and cautious. Chinese authorities are likely to continue rigorous oversight of Boeing aircraft, reflecting a broader approach that prioritizes safety, technological self-sufficiency, and reduced reliance on American companies. For Boeing to succeed in this environment, it must not only meet the highest safety and quality standards but also rebuild trust with Chinese regulators, airlines, and passengers. Beyond China, Boeing's struggles also reflect broader headwinds facing the U.S. aerospace industry. Trade disputes, supply chain disruptions, and intense regulatory scrutiny have all taken a toll. The company's recent moves, including shifting some manufacturing operations and seeking new global partnerships, demonstrate its efforts to adapt. However, the long-term outlook will depend heavily on Boeing's ability to innovate, maintain rigorous quality standards, and effectively navigate complex political landscapes. At the same time, COMAC's ambitions are not without obstacles. Despite its impressive domestic orders, the company faces formidable challenges in expanding internationally. Achieving global certification standards, convincing international airlines to shift suppliers, and competing against the well-established global support networks of Boeing and Airbus will be difficult tasks. Nevertheless, China's large domestic market provides a significant advantage, offering a safe base from which COMAC can refine its aircraft, expand production capacity, and gradually build its brand reputation on the global stage. Meanwhile, Airbus appears best positioned to benefit from the current environment. Its strategy of local integration, supply chain collaboration, and geopolitical neutrality has helped it secure deals across both Western and non-Western markets. In China specifically, Airbus's increased investment in assembly facilities and technology transfer initiatives are strengthening its position. By actively contributing to China's industrial development while maintaining its core European identity, Airbus has struck a balance that enables sustained growth even amid rising global tensions. The next few years will likely be decisive for the global aviation industry. Boeing's ability to fully re-establish itself in China will hinge on more than just meeting technical requirements. It will require consistent diplomatic engagement, strategic partnerships, and perhaps a rethinking of how the company approaches emerging markets more broadly. COMAC's rise could accelerate, especially if its aircraft prove reliable and cost-competitive beyond Chinese borders. Airbus, meanwhile, will continue to leverage its early investments to solidify its dominance in the region. For investors, airlines, and governments, these shifts necessitate a re-evaluation of strategies and expectations. No longer can the assumption of Boeing-Airbus hegemony go unchallenged. Instead, a more multipolar aviation world is emerging, one where domestic champions like COMAC can challenge international incumbents, where local production and political considerations play a larger role, and where success depends on the ability to adapt swiftly to changing global realities. In summary, while Boeing's resumption of deliveries to China marks a step forward, the broader trends suggest a far more complex and competitive future. COMAC's rise, Airbus's strategic deepening in China, and the overall evolution of the Chinese aviation sector point toward a world in which multiple players vie for dominance in one of the most critical and lucrative markets on the planet. Boeing's journey from here will require not only technical excellence but also deft navigation of a landscape that is rapidly shifting beneath its wings. As Boeing looks to chart a course forward, its leadership is keenly aware that success in China will not be achieved through aircraft deliveries alone. Building deeper partnerships with Chinese airlines, offering tailored services, and engaging in collaborative research and development projects could prove vital to securing long-term relevance. Boeing's historical strength has been in engineering innovation, but in today's environment, soft power, building trust, demonstrating commitment to local markets, and aligning with the long-term goals of partners, will be just as important. Boeing must also confront the reality that recovering lost ground will take years, not months. The slow pace of deliveries, regulatory caution, and increased competition suggest a long, patient campaign is needed. Meanwhile, the US-China geopolitical rivalry casts a long shadow over the aviation sector. Strategic industries like aerospace are increasingly seen through the lens of national security rather than purely commercial competition. In this environment, the risks of sudden policy shifts, export restrictions, and diplomatic spats are ever present. Boeing's fortunes in China are thus partly tied to broader political developments far beyond its direct control. Even the best technical performance and customer service might not fully shield it from the fallout of a deteriorating political climate. This is a key vulnerability that Boeing must manage carefully, diversifying its market exposure to mitigate the risks of overdependence on any single country. COMAC's ascent is a reflection of China's broader industrial strategy, where strategic sectors are nurtured through long-term planning, heavy investment, and protective domestic policies. While many Western observers once doubted the ability of Chinese aerospace firms to compete with Boeing and Airbus, the rapid progress of the C919 program has silenced much of that skepticism. Although the C919 still relies on some Western-made components, each successive model is expected to become increasingly indigenized. Over time, as China's domestic supply chains mature, COMAC's dependence on foreign suppliers will diminish, allowing it to offer fully, made-in-China, aircraft that could appeal strongly to nationalist sentiments at home and price-sensitive buyers abroad. For Airbus, the ability to maintain flexibility amid shifting geopolitics is a critical strength. By not being tied to any one political bloc, and by embedding itself deeply within local markets, Airbus has crafted a model that seems well suited to the emerging multipolar world order. Its second assembly line in Tianjin, expected by 2026, will double its local production capacity and allow it to respond faster to Chinese airline demands. Such a capability not only builds goodwill but also creates real logistical advantages over competitors who must ship completed aircraft across oceans. Looking ahead, another major factor will be sustainability. As global pressure mounts on aviation to reduce carbon emissions, companies that can offer more fuel-efficient aircraft, invest in sustainable aviation fuels, and develop next-generation green technologies will gain a significant edge. China has signaled strong interest in promoting green aviation, and partnerships in this space could open new doors. Boeing, Airbus, and even COMAC will need to show real leadership in environmental innovation if they hope to win favor with future-focused airlines and regulators. The human capital dimension should not be underestimated either. Boeing's ability to train, empower, and support local Chinese engineers, technicians, and pilots could influence its brand strength in the long run. A company that invests in the next generation of aviation talent within China would be seen not just as a foreign supplier but as a true partner in China's journey toward aviation excellence. Airbus has already made strides in this area with training centers and cooperation agreements with Chinese universities. Boeing will need to match or exceed such efforts to remain competitive. Ultimately, the battle for China's skies will be fought on multiple fronts: technology, politics, economics, and perception. Boeing, COMAC, and Airbus each bring different strengths to the table. The next decade will determine whether Boeing can overcome the headwinds it faces and reclaim its standing, whether COMAC can transition from domestic champion to global contender, and whether Airbus can maintain its careful balancing act in an increasingly divided world. One thing is certain: the global aviation industry is entering a period of profound transformation, and China will be at the very center of it.